Are you just playing a game over there?
Oh, we rolling? Oh shit! Yeah, I got Space Invaders. I got killed though.
Nice.
Put that down. We got a podcast to do.
We do. We do. All right. So if we started already, is that what this is?
I guess
Is this
we
a
have.
podcast? Hi, everybody. Welcome to Cranked and Ranked. And if you're reading the title of this particular episode, you're seeing it's like there's a different format to it. This is something that's called C&R Sidebar. C&R meaning cranked and ranked, because you put those together and it rhymes. That sounds nice, right?
Yeah. Me like
so it. Yeah. And so what C&R Sidebar is, well, let's do introductions first. Then we'll get into what C&R Sidebar is. First off, thank you for joining us on Cranked and Ranked for this different kind of episode. As always, old head, your host, with me as always, Mr. Eddie Sparxx.
Yo, me, back to you.
I love the whole the shirt with the open chest a little bit. You look like a guy that just played a rock show yesterday. And that's true. You did. Your band Sage
totally did, man.
played your second show ever.
Yeah.
I saw a couple pictures. That it was a legit stage, you know.
Yeah. I've never heard
cool.
my drums through a PA before. I've never had to mic it up.
Yeah.
And now I've had it mic'd up. It's like I don't know if I can go back, you know. I'm just gonna mic my drums up everywhere I go. Even in my own home, just to annoy everybody that much more.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, when you do get a chance to play a bigger stage and really get that big sound, it's like, it's fucking awesome. It doesn't matter if you're just playing to a dozen people, you feel like a fucking rock star with that kind of power.
Dude, there's like a part in one of our songs where there's like a full-on double kick part during the solo, where I accompany the guitar player with like the like, and I just felt like I was firing a machine gun with my feet. Like, it just sounded so cool. But yeah, I'm in a band called Sage, by the way. Shameless plug. Sage Kerno on Facebook.
Yeah, there you go. That's what I like. That we plug away whenever you get the inkling to do it. Go ahead and do it.
Cool.
But yeah, so moving into what today's episode is, C&R Sidebar. We kind of talked about it, I think, on the last episode or one before, where we said we were going to start doing episodes occasionally where we're able to talk about something outside of the realm of ranking. So it's still the two dudes, so it's still cranked and ranked, but it'll be a topic that, you know, we'll be discussing at length and not necessarily ranking. Well, no ranking at all. So it could be anything, really. I mean, it could be just talking about a particular band or a particular theme or something like that. Today is kind of it's a theme. Really, whatever we come up with that we feel we could get a lot of, you know, juice squeezed out of it for a you know, good lengthy episode where we just talk. And for those of you, I think very recently I saw a comment that said, you know, your show's pretty good, but you guys shouldn't talk about yourselves so much. And I'm like, well, this episode is not going to be for you.
Yeah.
Because we're going to be talking about ourselves a lot. Because for the very first C&R Sidebar, the topic, I don't even know what I'm going to title the episode now. So if whatever you're reading there, I have not thought of it yet. Because my first reaction when I thought of the topic was out of character. So this would be bands, artists, albums, songs that we love that somebody who, you know, maybe just doesn't know us that well or just kind of knows, you know, on the surface who we are, they would look at us and go, that's kind of out of character for you to listen to.
Yeah.
You can also throw in the idea of the guilty pleasure into this mix. But I think we figured out over the years of doing this podcast that Eddie and I don't really have guilty pleasures. We just have pleasures, and we don't feel guilty about any of them. But that's the sort of thing that would fall into this category. Music that we're into that a lot of people would go, wow, I never thought you'd be into that.
Yeah.
So that's what this episode is going to be. We're going to talk about all of that music, and wherever the discussion takes us, that's where it's going to go. Also, I'm going to go ahead and throw it out here early on in this episode. So now you know, like, with the idea of the C&R Sidebar. If anyone out there has an idea for a topic or a theme or whatever, put that in the comments in YouTube, or send it, if you're listening to this as a podcast, send it via email to oldheadpodcast@gmail.com. And just make sure it's something that you feel like we could get a good long discussion out of,
Yeah.
So it's not just going to be, what do you think about this album? Well, I guess some albums we could probably talk about for a long time, but some, it'd be like, welcome to C&R Sidebar. What do you think about this album? It's okay. All right. Bye. Anyway, so yeah. So we've got some topics for these kind of episodes. I feel so unprepared for this, because normally there's like notes with a ranking.
Yeah,
and
normally we've had a format for the last 2 years that we have just completely thrown to the fucking wind.
But I feel like this is good. This is kind of like a what do you call that? A palate cleanser for us, because we're always just ranking all the time, and we're ranking fools. And then today it gives us a chance to sort of just
wanking fools.
That too. It gives us a chance to sort of just like talk and not be so bogged down with the idea of putting albums in order and picking them apart. So yeah. So I mean, really, like, people that don't know me very well, and just kind of like people that I work with, they can look at me and go, oh, he's probably into metal, probably loves Metallica. He might be into like some 70s rock, maybe some alternative rock. And they'd be right about all of those things, really. And the one thing that most people don't realize is that I'm really into hip hop, but I'm not really going to talk about hip hop today, because I feel like, especially on my channel, I've covered it, and we've covered hip hop
very clear. Yeah.
And we did Cranked and Ranked, Dr. Dre and NWA and Jazzy Jeff and the Fresh Prince.
That was the first one we did. Yeah.
Yeah.
And Public Enemy as well.
And Public Enemy as well. So that's not really a surprise. But I tried to come up with a list of things and they're things that I truly enjoy and love. And there are things that I go, but that might be a thing where somebody might be surprised. Did you? So I don't know how we literally did not discuss how to approach this episode. So I don't know how Eddie approached it. Like, did you write a list down, or are you just going off your brain of things that you love? Like, or do you have an idea of where we're starting?
I've made like a couple notes and a few sub notes of those notes. Like, I've put maybe like a genre and then like some example bands, but that's it. The rest is just us having a chat, having a nice laid back thing here.
Yeah, and we'll see where it takes us. The first thing to point out is that, like, I hate people assuming anything about me. First off, because usually they're wrong, because it's that thing where there's a whole lot of music that people probably wouldn't expect me to be into, but at the same time, because I like so much metal, there's a whole lot of metal, and then people are like, oh, you probably are into this. I'm like, no, not really. In fact, most people that I run into, like out in the world, which I hate going out into most of the time, when I run into people who do know about metal, I'm pretty sure that if they rattle off 10 band names, 9 of them I don't like.
Wow.
So that's just how it is. But that both sides of that get a little bit obnoxious. I'm sure you get the same thing. Like, people see you and they just expect you to be a certain kind of person and into certain kinds of things, which in some cases you are. But
a big one for me, I remember there was a few times during, kind of college and uni where you would get certain people that, say they gave us an assignment for, like, You team up with like 3 to 4 other people in this room, and at the end of like the lesson, have part of a song down, right?
Oh.
You know, figure something out between you without fail, right? Without fail, the immediate assumption from at least one person in every group that I've ever been in. Now, granted, I was always wearing a metal shirt of some description, but they always had to chime in and preface before I even spoke. You know, I would get so far as saying, "So, what kind of drum beat do you want?" Well, I'm a singer songwriter, so we probably shouldn't do anything too heavy. And it's like,
Jesus Christ,
and I'm like, do you really think I was going to make you try to growl, for fuck's sake? Like so many times. And this is like, sorry to come in hot with something that like frustrates me, but I'm
this is
going
great.
off.
This is great.
I'm off the rails. So like without fail, it like pretty much every time we got teamed up, and this applied to boys and girls. So I'm not making this a sexist thing. Just so happened to be the vocalist.
What's wrong with being sexy?
Yeah. Oh man. I remember there were so many occasions where like so many ideas of mine, like even just something down to a riff, and it could be like a fucking like ching 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 ching, but because like it was an overdriven guitar, they'd be like, no, that's too heavy. So unless unless I played on the fucking clean channel, it just wasn't acceptable. So I remember there were several times during the formative years of that really frustrating thing where you get placed into a group and people immediately make this assumption about you, that you are wearing a Slayer shirt, so Slayer is the only thing you like and the only thing you can play, right? And then all of a sudden I start playing the drum beat to Rosanna by Toto, right?
Yeah.
Eat a fucking dick. Like,
yeah.
So, yeah.
You don't know me.
Yeah.
I do have to say thank you now, because that 2-second example of a riff that you just did, you did dun, 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 and now in my head is just because he's bad, Leroy Brown, baddest man in the whole damn like
we're gonna get claimed.
I sounded almost like Jim Croce or whoever the fuck does that song. Anyway, so like it happens so much. Like I'll hear like a second of a song, and then it engulfs my brain to where it becomes the soundtrack to whatever's happening. So let's get into talking about other music now, so I can get bad Leroy Brown out of my brain.
Cool.
What do you want to? You bring up something first, whether it's an artist or a genre or something. We'll let this thing become what it becomes.
Cool. I'm wondering where I should start, because the one at my top of the list is pretty spicy, so I want to give it a little bit of anticipation.
The one at the top of my list is also spicy, which is why I'm saving that for the end.
Ah, very nice. So I did have written down, I did initially think to myself, I was toying with the idea of saying some hip hop, but we've covered hip hop on here before, like you said. I was just waiting for you to say it. So that is going out of my notes.
Oops, sorry.
Everybody, yeah. Everybody,
we should have discussed this before we got on camera. Hey, it's a behind the scenes. It's an extra bang for your non-buck.
We'll do it live. But first thing I think I'll say is, you know what? I get a lot of stuff, about, I like a lot of really old music compared to now, right? But there are some modern artists that do something for me.
Okay. All right.
And this is largely from influence from my girlfriend, but it's music made today in the pop world that I can listen to, and I don't want to fucking claw my ears out.
Yeah.
First one I wanted to talk about was Billie Eilish. I think I think in terms of, she might be massive, she might appeal to a younger audience, but she's doing something that sounds completely original.
Yeah.
her stuff is like, you know, kind of, if you took a singer songwriter girl type, made it kind of spooky a little bit, but had like hip hop beats in there, and
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of genius. Like, because that is pretty much the soundtrack to the generation of now. You've got
Yeah.
people that are nostalgic for the whole emo thing, right? So
Mm-hmm.
a little spooky aesthetic is always going to go a long way. But if
Mm-hmm.
you've also got a little bit of a hip hop feel in there, and plus they're really good at marketing these days as well. I'm excited by pop stars like this because it's
Yeah.
different, you know. It's not, you know, another carbon copy boy band sort of situation, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm a big fan of Billie Eilish. I need to listen to her second album a lot more, but
That's what I was gonna say because my daughter is a big Billie Eilish fan,
hmm,
and I haven't heard her most recent album. And just based on the cover alone, I was a little bit skeptical. So I'm like, oh, I don't know, because an artist that I also like, that I equate, well, I used to like, that I also equate with Billie Eilish is Lord. And
yeah.
the very first Lord album, not only I owned it on CD at the time. I listened to it a lot. I thought it was
Hmm.
fucking great, but it's that same quality you're talking about, where it's very dark music, but it's got like an electronic
Is that the
poppy
one with
kind of
Royals
feel
on
to
it?
it. With Royals, Royals is on
Yeah.
that. And then like she put out another album, which I think was called Melodrama, and that one I was like, well, half this album is really great. The other half of it, I'm like, I can take or leave it. And then she comes out again with this newest album where she's kind of gone away from being dark at all, and
Hmm.
it's so like not interesting at all. And so whenever I think about like Billie Eilish, I'm like, oh, is that going to happen to her too? Is she going to be like, oh, I'm out of my angsty phase, now I want to sing songs about how everyone needs to turn their cell phones off and go outside? I'm just like, no, I don't want that. I want songs about not about being afraid to go outside. That's the shit that I want.
I will
um
say there are songs on there that do feel a little bit more, you know, angelic and optimistic, but there are songs on there as well on the newest one that are fucking bops. Like Therefore I Am
mhm.
is a tune. That's like got a really cool feel to it.
Yeah,
Um,
I mean,
there's
this
even
is
one on
interesting.
there. Yeah.
Now that we're talking about this, I realize that I didn't like put anything modern
Hmm.
on this list, and it's probably because when it comes to modern stuff, it's so when it comes to like, stuff that's not metal or hip hop, there's not a lot that really like grabs me. Like I'll hear it and I'll like it. There's plenty of things here and there that I hear, and I'll hear a song and go, this song's pretty good. A really great example of this, and this is a high recommendation from me for a young, I guess, pop artist. The newest track, it may not be the newest because people put out so much shit so quickly these days, but the most recent track by Willow. Do you know who Willow is?
I think so.
Willow Smith. She
Yeah,
is
yeah.
Will
There we go.
Smith's daughter.
So
Um,
does she just go by Willow? No.
she goes by Willow. She has a song, I think it's called Maybe It's My Fault. It literally has a metal breakdown at the end. Like it, and
Cool.
there's like chugging, like the pre-chorus, there's literally a guitar going like that in there, but it breaks into this really well-written pop melody for the chorus. Her vocals sound amazing. The arrangement of the song is really cool and really enjoyable, and it's also dark. It has a dark quality to it. And
Cool.
it's not the first song from Willow that I liked. Like there's been a
Hmm.
few that like I've heard through my daughter, or just randomly because she's fucking Will Smith's daughter, and so
Hmm.
I've heard it. But
Keep my
this
daughter's name out your fucking mouth.
Oh my god. But I
Love you,
highly
love.
recommend that. I highly recommend just if you got your Spotify's or Apple Music, just go to Willow, and it's called Maybe It's My Fault, and you'll be surprised at, because it's the kind of thing where I listen to it and I go, is this the future of like bringing rock and roll back, because there's rock elements in this song. I mean, really, if you break it down, if you take the production thing out of it, it's actually just a rock song. It's just got poppy qualities to it. But
Yeah.
I'm like, this may be the way that it's going to happen, where all the younger kids get into this music that has this little bit of heaviness to it, and it becomes a thing that leads them down the road. I mean, I did a whole fucking album review of the last MGK album. And the only reason I did that was because I heard it and I went, this is a thing that tons of young people are listening to. I think it's okay, but it's not awful. But it gives me that idea of like, oh, this is because the only way we're going to get back to rock being a big deal is by having stuff that's accessible that brings the young people back to it, and then there becomes a boom of bands, and then we start getting some really fucking great shit. Great shit's not going to happen right out of the gate. But it makes me excited. Things like that. I'm not including MGK on my list of things that I like, because it's you go back and listen to it again and you're like, all right, it's a little heavy handed in the I'm an emo pop punk guy kind of thing. Yeah. but yeah, that's a good start with Billie Eilish.
Yeah.
Just stay on the modern tip here. Do you have anything else modern like in your list you want to talk about?
Yeah, because I have two others as well, and I have this like nostalgia connected to it very quickly. I've never had something develop such nostalgia so quickly, but I remember during the summer of 2019 just hearing shit tons of Doja Cat. And, girlfriend's a big fan, and vicariously through her, I became a fan because, one, she's a hilarious person, like, behind the scenes. Like, the shit she gets up to, she posts online. She doesn't act like a celebrity. She's just like a big kid, really, and I like that energy. But, on the flip side, Streets is one of the sexiest songs I've ever heard. So it's
I don't think I've ever heard any song. I've heard like bits of it, but all I know is that no song has made me go, oh, I want to hear the rest of this song. It's always been like, okay. So it's not connected with me at all.
For me, it's more like you kind of, if you know her personality and you know that she's got a lot of very tongue-in-cheek kind of qualities to her, that like, some songs are more serious than others. But she's got a song called Moo, where she literally dressed in this like cow onesie, and she made this song in a day she was like, screw it, what have I got? I've got a green screen and a cow outfit, and she made this whole song where she raps about being a cow, and it's hilarious. But like, she's like the only one who could get away with that and do it so well. Yeah, and I think, if anyone was going to do it, it'd be her. But yeah. Oh, and sorry.
I was just going to say that another artist, another modern artist that I don't necessarily, there's no specific album or songs that I think are like really great, but I like her voice, and I think she has the potential of doing some really cool shit, is Miley Cyrus.
Yeah.
I really like her voice. And of course, like, like Wrecking Ball is a great song. Like, she has her moments. The interesting thing about her, because it made me think of that, because you brought up like the cow thing, like Miley Cyrus did an entire album where her backing band was the Flaming Lips.
Yeah.
And it's like a really bizarre album. And I wish that I liked it more, because I heard it and I go, I love that this exists, but I'm not going to listen to this again. But she has that same quality of like somebody that I feel like if things are going to be odd or out of the ordinary or silly or whatever, I feel like she could probably pull that off. And I like her voice as well. So she's got potential, that kid. She's going places.
Yeah, I've always thought that her voice was really cool. And I'll admit, I'm gonna raise my hand now. When I first got my iPod, when I just turned 11 years old, there might have been one or two Hannah Montana songs on that iPod.
Well, you were 11. That's appropriate.
that was my generation, but I was
Yeah.
also a dude, so I didn't go around announcing that shit.
Nah,
Hannah Montana was funny.
if I was a kid, I would have been all over Hannah Montana. That would have been because I liked shows about music and musicians and whatever, however loosely it was done. When I was a kid, I always loved that shit. So I know that I would have been into Hannah Montana if I was your age.
And I always liked how Billy Ray Cyrus, plays, himself in the show. Um, you know, but he was very self-aware, so he would
Yeah,
make jokes about, achy break your heart and things like that.
yeah.
But yeah, I used to love the Disney Channel shows, man. I'll tell you what, a reason for that is most of my friends, growing up, my
Mhm.
best friend was a girl, like right the way through. And we just kind of always like, she would watch the dude shows and I would watch the girl shows. I mean, but even the girl shows, like quote unquote, still had like side characters who were dudes who would do dude shit. So
Yeah.
yeah.
For some reason, I just had I had a vision of you using your green screen so you could do one of those Disney Channel intros. You're like, I'm Eddie Sparxx,
Yeah.
and you're watching the Disney Channel, and you do a little.
Just draw a fucking cock instead.
Yeah,
That'd be really funny. Thank you for that idea.
get to work. What do you got? What you got left for modern? Because literally, I'm taking us back once I start getting into stuff.
No worries. I've got Megan Thee Stallion.
That would count because even though it is hip hop, it is pop also.
Yeah,
and she's from Houston, so I'm gonna be like, let's celebrate the talent from Houston. Yeah, I like her. There's no particular songs of hers that I've heard that I'm like, that's the one, but I hear her even when she like guests on other people's stuff, and I'm like, oh man, she just made this other person look like they were fucking amateur.
yeah. Like that's the thing as well. Like there's so many songs of hers where I've heard it, and I just find myself, I do the riff face.
Yeah,
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 yeah.
yeah. She's great.
I love her delivery, man. Have you ever heard "Girls in the Hood"? She literally did like a yeah. See, I love that. She
my wife really likes that song. It's on a playlist I think she has, and I heard it a few times. It's a cool song.
Fuck being good. I'm a bad bitch. I love that.
I'm pretty sure I've heard my wife, like she's, sewing or something, has her headphones on. I'm pretty sure I've heard her doing that line.
Yeah. Oh, dude.
So I'm going to be kind of quick with some of mine because I realize that some of mine I've talked about on this show, but they're really important artists to me. And I feel I'm trying to like pick and choose like what I talk about now. Because I'm like, some things are like not going to be that big of a surprise, but I feel like they're worth talking about. I am a really, really big fan of this gentleman right here. Which is Phil Collins. I brought records. I always bring records, and I'm holding up the No Jacket Required album from Phil Collins.
And I can tell it's an original because he's not old.
Yeah, he's not old. It is an OG copy. I like his voice. I love hearing him sing. And so that's why, like, when you get into that argument of like, oh, Genesis was better when they were psychedelic and they had Peter Gabriel, I'm like, no, because I can't stand listening to Peter Gabriel sing. Phil Collins' voice has like this power and soul to it. I literally love everything he sings on. Like, it doesn't, you fucking Tarzan soundtrack. I'm fine with that. But he's a guy that I always want to talk about because I feel like there's still about, half of the people out there that just think that Phil Collins music was like a joke or something, or he's just dumb pop music. I'm like, the dude is insanely talented, an insanely good songwriter, and a great singer, and a great drummer. I mean, the guy's like, he's one of those things that everyone around the world should be constantly celebrating. And I feel like he's come around a little bit because the memes with In the Air Tonight like became a thing. Yeah. So I think people give him.
I did one.
You did one. I love that one too.
Yeah.
But I realize that that's not really that bold of a thing. Like, oh, I'm into Phil Collins, but I really am. Like, as a singer, he's one of my favorite singers. Like, if there was a top 10 vocalists of all time, Phil Collins for me is going to be on that list.
Cool.
Because I love the way that he sounds. Speaking of, I'm gonna move even further back, and then maybe we can get back to you for a second. But speaking of top 10 singers of all time, Otis Redding.
Nice.
Now right here, this is a fucking like a three LP like collection of Otis Redding. This was like from the 60s or 70s. Because like I don't know if you know much about Otis Redding,
yeah,
but he's an insanely good singer. He was, because he died really young. Like he was, I think he was like 25 or something like that.
Plane crash, wasn't it?
I believe it was a plane crash. But the thing that's so crazy about his music is that you listen to Otis Redding, you listen to his voice, the songs he did, you watch, like there's a great performance he did at Monterey, like where Jimi Hendrix played and everything. You watch that guy and you're like, no way that guy is in his 20s. He's got the fucking talent and soul of a guy that's been doing it for 20 years or more. Yeah. And so it just blows my mind every time I hear him. I'm like, one of the greatest vocalists ever, in my opinion. And he didn't make it to 30. And I'm just like, I mean, and it's so funny because my 20s are like a period that I just want to wipe out of history in everybody's brains. Like if I could literally do like a Men in Black thing where I just go boop and like everyone forgets everything I ever did in my 20s, I'd be so happy for that. Whereas Otis Redding, like that was his prime. And I highly recommend, if you ever get a chance, just go to YouTube and type in Otis Redding at Monterey, because his performance is insane. And the rumor that I always heard, I don't know if it's true or not, was that Jimi Hendrix was supposed to play after. Well, he did. I think he played after or later on after Otis Redding. And the rumor is that backstage Jimi Hendrix was nervous as fuck because Otis Redding was on. And he's like, I don't think I can follow this. And so from what I've heard, that was a big reason why he decided to light his guitar on fire, because he's just like, I gotta fucking upstage Otis Redding somehow. And it's so funny to hear things like that from Jimi fucking Hendrix. Another dude that like in his 20s was just knocking it out of the park. That's not weird music to talk about because it's fucking Jimi Hendrix. But two of my favorite singers of all time right there, Phil Collins, Otis Redding. Two things I think a lot of people would be like, oh, I didn't realize you'd be into them. So out of character, not guilty pleasures. I have so much pleasure in me with Phil and Otis. Anyway, what do you got, sir?
I was just gonna say, like, with Phil Collins, I have like there's several things that I think of when I think Phil Collins. Not only some great songs, holy shit, like Easy Lover, what a tune.
Oh, I love Easy Lover.
Yeah, and like, but I just love that we can always bring it back to the PS2 era GTA games. Yeah, because there is a mission in Vice City Stories where you have to keep Phil Collins safe. Like, and he plays himself and he voices himself.
No way.
Yeah, you can awesome. Look at it on YouTube. Like, there's a mission where you have to stop hitmen trying to get to Phil Collins while he plays In the Air Tonight, and you're up in like the stage rigging, shooting these bad guys, trying to kill Phil Collins, and it's like so funny and so surreal. But like at that point, you know, that was the last game made for that era. Yeah. And it was like, okay, we've already cemented ourselves as like one of the biggest games in the world. Let's not just, you know, mention these celebrities. Let's have one in the game. Yeah. And it's so funny. Like, you get involved in, because it's set in 1984. You're involved in all this cocaine stuff. You're involved in, you know, all of the most 80s cliches and tropes. They just lovingly fit into them. Mm-hmm. But the Phil Collins mission is just one of those things. Like, even if you can't play it, it's still worth a watch on YouTube because it's just so amusing. Like seeing this like Play-Doh looking Phil Collins, you know, on stage, trying not to get shot while you're up in the stage rig and rescuing him. But another one, which also ties in, because he was in an episode of Miami Vice, and that was really fun too.
I mean, the first Miami Vice soundtrack has "In the Air Tonight" on it, right? I think
Yeah,
so. Yeah,
yeah, because I think he appears in like the second season because it went down so well. He was like, oh, I want to be in it. Even I think Jan Hammer, the like
yeah.
dude that did the soundtrack from Miami Vice, he
Mm-hmm.
appears in like a scene in an episode where he's the wedding DJ. It's hilarious, like how they
Nice.
fit these, people into these things.
Yeah.
But yeah,
No, I mean, Phil
yeah,
Collins is fucking great, and it's a little bit, and it breaks my heart a little bit seeing footage of him currently on this Genesis tour because he's like whatever is going on, whatever ailments he has, he can't stand up.
yeah,
And he just looks like an old man now, and I'm like, oh man, how many more years do we have with Phil Collins? And because I mean, he seems like a pretty smart guy, and I think that maybe one more tour, and he'll probably just be like, look, I'm gonna go and live the rest of my life. Bye everyone, and that's kind of sad, but that's the thing that I'm not ready for is watching all of my heroes get really old and die.
yeah,
Because a lot of the people that I would consider my heroes, a lot of them are 10, 15 years older than me.
yeah.
So I don't know. Anyway, not to be a downer, but yeah, Phil Collins. For those of you out there that like know "In the Air Tonight" and maybe like "Susudio," which are both great songs, but I mean, I would say that if you really need to get an idea of how great he is, go listen to the song "I Don't Care Anymore." Um,
Oh,
or
that's in
even
GTA 5.
yeah, that's a
Yeah.
fucking insanely good song. There's a
Love it.
there's great songs like there's one on No Jacket Required called "Inside Out" that wasn't even a single, and it's just I love that song so much. And then
Mm.
things he did with Genesis, but there's a song on one of his later albums called I think it's called "I Wish It Would Rain Down," and that's a fucking incredible song. And you just hear his voice, and he just has this thing where his voice just fucking soars over the fucking music for me. So anyway, where do you want to go from here?
Cool. Phew, good question. I have a few here to pull from. What time
Mm-hmm.
are we at? 37. Oh, plenty of time.
Yeah.
Let's. I'm gonna take it to kind of a strange place that
Okay. Cool.
it kind of. This is like the one genre that for me overlaps both old and new. So
Okay.
for me, I want to talk a little bit about vaporwave.
Oh, all right. Yeah. Which is a
I
genre, folks. If you don't know vaporwave, you want to maybe explain it briefly?
Yeah, it's kind of like um imagine you've got like some 80s, like some cheesy 80s commercial music, but you pull it apart, you dissect it, you sample it, and then all of a sudden, a few other cool samples later, you've got this really cool, vibey thing. Some bands are a little bit more experimental with it. Some bands go a little bit more vibey with it, which is what I tend to like. I tend to like the mostly instrumental
Yeah.
stuff because it kind of feels like this, you know, psychedelic, surreal thing where it's like this altered reinterpretation of the past into something new.
Yeah.
And I like that. It doesn't dwell on the nostalgia. It kind of, celebrates these things. There's a group or an artist, sorry, Luxury Elite. They're a really good example of some, cool vaporwave that I like to listen to. It's like quite nice and chill for the most part. It's good relaxing music I like to listen to. I prefer the more
Would
relaxing vaporwave.
would vaporwave cover bands like Perturbator and
That's more in the synthwave sort of thing.
synthwave? Okay. All right.
So yeah, uh, there's a aesthetically they share some similarities,
Yeah.
but stylistically, synthwave is like total celebration of like airbrushed action movie posters and just kick ass, you know, piloting a fucking Trans Am that can fly for some reason sort
Yeah.
of stuff.
It's
Whereas
it's essentially music that sounds like this what I wish every movie soundtrack still sounded like because
yeah,
I
yeah.
miss that kind of shit.
Yeah, I got a bunch of like great synthwave recommendations as well. The Kung Fury soundtrack is a
Yeah.
prime example of synthwave.
And you
Um,
got True Survivor by David Hasselhoff on there.
yeah, man.
What the
That
fuck
song is
happened with Kung Fury? What they weren't they making like a full length movie out of it?
well, let's have a look. I'm gonna
Yeah,
check on the YouTube channel right
because I
now.
remember the 30-minute version or whatever it is came out, and I remember I loved it. And then I was following them on social media, and they got picked up. They got a deal where they were going to do a full length version of Kung Fury, with a big studio, and that was
Mm.
like that had to have been like 6 or 7 years ago, maybe
The
6 years
Yeah.
ago.
Well, Kung Fury came out 7 years. Fucking hell, 7 years ago.
Yeah.
Like the original, and that
Hmm.
one's awesome.
Yeah.
But like they kind of drip fed like behind the scenes stuff, and
Hmm.
like they did a mobile game and everything as well. Um, but as far as I know, they haven't released anything new in the last 4 years. But I would love to see another Kung Fury, even if it was just another half-hour one.
Yeah.
But I would
I
love to
it's
see a
I'll,
full-on.
I'll have to do some research into that because I don't know if that movie just fell through or they decided to do something else. I don't know, but
What's the line where it's like, what time am I in? Prehistoric times. That explains the laser raptors. And it's
yeah,
like,
yeah, that's a lot of fun.
yeah,
I it's
yeah,
a I'm going through and I'm all like I'm eliminating things that I'm all like, this won't be that interesting to talk about because I came stocked with the idea of like, oh, what if we run through things really quick and it's not really like going well. So some of these things I do not need to talk about.
fair.
Um, but
Do do do
I
what you
gotta
wish, man.
I have to give a minute to this to Hall and Oates
Oh,
because I'm pretty sure you also are into Hall and Oates because I just knowing what you
you're
like.
out of touch.
Yeah,
I'm out of
and that's the album I'm
time.
holding up, Big Bam Boom,
Hey,
which when I was a kid, I loved that album. So like Hall and Oates is well, I guess you could put Phil Collins in the same boat. Artists that I've been into since I was a kid, and I love all Hall and Oates stuff from the '70s stuff. It's a little more groovy, all the way to the big production of like this album because it's like I think when this album came out, it was one of the most expensive albums ever made, Big Bam Boom, because
wow.
they were interested in using the most cutting edge technology. So everything on that album, it sounds very dated now, but at the time, which I think was 1983 or something like that, maybe 84, sometime around there, um, it was like literally the coolest shit that you could equipment you could get and the looping and keys and whatever. It was like the height of like all the best technology. But yeah, I mean, I think Hall and Oates have enough praise out there that they're not an artist I think needs me.
Well, there's
People love
here's a
them.
real. That's the thing. It's really cool because I can bounce off of this as well. I'm in a lot of like Grand Theft Auto nostalgia groups
Yeah,
on Facebook. I was always a big fan of them growing up. Um, Hall and Oates, Out of Touch is just another reason why Vice City probably has the most perfectly crafted soundtrack of any game ever. You can
yeah,
just tell that they were like, "Oh, holy shit." The last game we made had a like grossed a shit ton of money. We should spend it all on licensing all these tracks so we can make this 80s Miami utopia, and lo and behold they did it.
that had to
Out of
have been
touch.
fun.
So,
Like
yeah.
like building the game world and the story of the game, that's one thing, but just to be there when they're just like throwing out ideas of like, oh, this song's got to be on there, and when they actually realized they could get that song, like
Yeah.
it had to have been nothing but fun, like putting that shit together.
There's actually a really cool like it's really short, but you see enough of it. You get to see all of the it's like a really old video, like pre-YouTube video.
Uh-huh.
And it's on YouTube now, but it was clearly put onto like some sort of like website as like a here's a look at behind the scenes, like early 2000s internet.
Yeah.
But it's this really cool behind the scenes footage of the voice cast for that game Vice City. Holy shit, I forgot how many celebrities voice act in that game.
Yeah.
Fucking Ray Liotta, Gary Busey, Philip Michael Thomas, obviously Miami Vice.
Yeah.
God, who else?
Yeah, the other guy from Miami Vice.
Yeah. Yeah.
Who also did an album too. Because like Don Johnson put out an album, and then Philip Michael Thomas did too. And I think everyone was like, we're listening to Don Johnson's album.
And it's funny because I'm going to keep this train going because Heartbeat by Don Johnson is in GTA 5 on the like classic rock station. And it's just so funny to like, they've done so many at this point that it's undeniable how responsible they are for all a sizable chunk of the music I know.
Yeah.
So I do tend to bring them up a lot, but that's only out of just sheer affection because it's just where I found all my stuff, man. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, my music, stuff like that, the Don Johnson album and Philip Michael Thomas just reminds me of my mom, because my mom wasn't a person that bought music very often. But if a person from a TV show or movie she liked put out an album, she owned it. She owned Rick Springfield because Rick Springfield was on like General Hospital or some soap opera. Yeah. She owned Don Johnson. She owned Eddie Murphy. She owned like all of these different albums. Party All the Time is a fucking killer song, by the way.
Party All the Time is in GTA 5.
I love that song. That song is, and I love the video of that. I don't know if you've watched the video for Party All the Time, but it's all like they're in the studio recording Party All the Time. For some reason, there's like 2 or 3 electric guitar players in there doing shit. There is no electric guitar anywhere on that song, but yet there's these dudes that are all like, we need guitar. Just put some guitars behind me. I know it's all synthesizer.
That's the thing, though. That's one of those songs that would perfectly lend itself to being a hard rock song.
Yeah,
like songwriting wise, there is absolutely no reason it wouldn't work. But it also works really well with just all synth, and I love that.
Party all the time. Yeah, fucking Rick James, man. Cocaine's a hell of a drug. But yeah, I love that song. But that's almost a pretty good segue into another like genre and group of bands that I would like to get into that I'm like I really love. Let me get ready for this because this is a whole thing here. So one of the things that I love is late 80s, early 90s R&B. Love it. So like, you're starting like, if you want to start here with, Bobby Brown, Don't Be Cruel.
I'm gonna chime in here and say I've got the exact same stuff here. I've got a New Jack Swing section on my notes.
So that's what was happening around that time was the New Jack Swing started, but it wasn't just that. It was R&B. There was something that happened with R&B music where because of the popularity of hip hop, they started to merge. And so I love Bobby Brown. And then another great one. Well, if you're going to talk Bobby Brown, you can't fucking leave out Belle Biv DeVoe. So and this whole fucking album, the whole Poison album is so good, and I loved it at the time, and it's never like Poison is one of those songs that has never not been a party starter for me. And I just love that whole vibe. And then you go a little further into the 90s, and you get TLC. Who TLC's probably it's my second favorite girl group. We'll get into my first a little bit later, but there's this I love TLC, but once again, I guess you could extend that New Jack Swing to all of this music. And I it's like, you can any song from that era, even ones that like I don't think are that great, it doesn't matter. The vibe of that era of R&B is just so fucking great. And I loved when there was that, to bring it back a little bit more modern, there was that what's that guy's name? God damn it, why am I blanking on
Bruno Mars?
Bruno Mars, there you're going.
Yeah.
That song he did with Cardi B that sounds like a New Jack Swing song.
Yeah, is that Finesse? I think it's called.
Oh, it is Finesse. It is Finesse. Yeah.
Dripping in finesse.
And I love that. I love that song. Hold on, I gotta get a drink of water.
No worries.
But yeah,
little beer music, maestro.
a lot of that stuff I just absolutely love. But coming out of that, so obviously I like that whole vibe
Mm.
of the 90s R&B, but I found myself over the years, and especially within the last few years, developing an appreciation also for 90s boy band style stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Now my go-to for that is Backstreet Boys. I'm more like, I know if we were back in the 90s, everyone would have their camp. Who are you, NSYNC or Backstreet Boys?
Yeah.
When they were out at the time, I'm like, fuck all of these people. I wanted nothing to do. I remember that I think I was probably 20, 19 or 20, something like that. It's in the late 90s. And I remember I'm just watching MTV because even though they played a lot of stuff I didn't care for, MTV was kind of always on. Because it was like a comfort, and sometimes they'd play songs that I like, and sometimes they'd have music news. I'm like, oh, I want to know what's going on in music. But I just remember one day they're like, oh, the one of the most requested songs on MTV. Here it is, the Backstreet Boys, and I don't know what song it was. It was from their first album, and I just remember looking at it going, didn't we get rid of this kind of music already? Because like New Kids on the Block had already come in and were no longer cool, and then all of a sudden it's like Backstreet Boys, and I'm like, did I miss something where all of a sudden shit that everybody hated became shit that is popular? And that's why music, that's when I knew that popular music had kind of blown past me. But that being said, these days you throw on, I Want It That Way or Backstreet's Back, everybody, it doesn't matter. That shit, as the kids say, that shit slaps to me. And I brought this up before on another episode. I think it was on the Def Leppard episode, because we were talking about that vibe of the stuff that they did.
Wow.
There is a recent Backstreet Boys song called Don't Go Breaking My Heart. And it's not a cover of the Elton John song. It's a completely different song. But it is, if you're talking about a pop song that has come out in the past 20 years, it is the best. I have not heard another song that literally, that is my 2000s, this millennium pop jam. It is so fucking good. The sound of it with the keys and synthesizers and the vocal melodies of it and the beat, everything is just so fucking good that I remember I was in an Uber. Dude, you got Ubers over there, right?
Yeah.
I was in an Uber. I don't remember where I was going.
Kidding? We got horse and carriage.
I was in an Uber, and I remember the guy was just playing the radio, and this song was on, and I'm just like, what the fuck is this song? This is so good. And so I whipped out my phone, and I don't know if I had Shazam or if I Googled it, but it came up like, well, this is Don't Go Breaking My Heart by the Backstreet Boys. And I'm like, no fucking way. Which, I mean, now if you listen to it, you'll go, oh, it sounds, kind of like the Backstreet Boys. But the song is like, it's like 5 years old, I think. It's, it's not very old. But it's like one of those things that, like, I'm like, man, these guys, it should have been huge. And it was probably huge with Backstreet Boys fans, but but I am enjoying that whole vibe so much that recently, like, I started following like the Backstreet Boys, like, on their social medias and stuff. And they're on tour right now. And every time they have a clip of them on stage, I'm like, that looks so fun. I kind of would like to go. Yeah. So
it's funny you should bring up the boy band thing, because I'm now seeing, like, that era is now 20 years ago. So people who were kids then are now, like, in a similar way to how in the late 90s and early 2000s you started to see a resurgence of the glam bands going out and touring again, and teaming up, doing these big tours. Of course it was like a nostalgia thing, but it was still great to see people getting back out and enjoying themselves. But, like, I saw that Pixar movie Turning Red. It's the one with the red panda in it. It's like one of the newest ones.
Oh,
Well,
yeah, well,
it's it.
that's probably why I don't know it, because my daughter's 11 now, and so I have no clue what's going on in the world of kids movies, because she's way past it. We're fucking watching It right now. We're about to watch It Part 2,
Nice.
which that movie fucking blows, by the way.
Oh,
Holy
really? What, the new
crap.
one?
It's yes. I haven't seen Part 2 yet, but Part 1, how does anyone think that's good? It's like I won't go into it, but it's just so badly done that and also I was complaining to my family too, because I'm all like, look, I think this is lost on me because clowns are not scary to me. They're boring as fuck. And so every time the clown shows up, I'm like, all right. I mean, come on. The blood all coming out of the sink all over the place, that was scarier than this fucking goofball. Anyway, so where how did we get to that? I'm sorry. I just jumped right over to you were talking about Turning Red, the Pixar
Turning
movie.
Red. Yeah. So the cool thing about it is that it's set. This is how significant this is.
Okay.
And it was kind of a wake-up call for me because I would have been 4. We now have movies that are affectionately set in the early 2000s because it's set in 2002. And
okay.
there's a big focus on the girls in the movie want to see a boy band, but the main character's mum won't let her because, like, she has this thing where if she gets overexcited, she turns into this red panda, this giant red panda. And it's like a really cute movie.
It sounds like it.
Yeah, but it's so funny to see these, like, that's like the first era I remember, like yeah. I vaguely remember, being a wide-eyed 4 or 5-year-old looking at the TV. Oh, they're dancing on the TV. That's cool.
Yeah.
Good for them. Everybody's cheering. This is cool. Can we put Bob the Builder back on now, please? But yeah.
It's funny that we were just that it led us in this direction where I brought up the movie It, because in the movie It, there's references to New Kids on the Block, which to me, if you watch that movie again, the movie is apparently set in the 80s. And you wouldn't know that except for the fact that there's 2 New Kids on the Block reference and one of the bullies wears metal shirts. But everything else about it, there's nothing 80s about that movie at all. And I'm just like, well, why even do that if you're not just going to go, I guess at one point they're standing in front of a marquee in a movie theater and it says like Batman and Lethal Weapon 2 behind them. And I think I just wish they had gone more, just make it more 80s. Okay. But I guess you have to be in a small town where it's kind of frozen in time and like bad shit can happen. Anyway, never mind. Yeah. I'm not a fan of that movie. And so hopefully Part 2 will be better. It's got Bill Hader in it. I like Bill Hader. So
here's a question. Do you like the original?
You mean the TV movie?
Yeah.
Yes.
Tim Curry as Pennywise.
Now that one it's cheesy as fuck at times. But when it came out, like I saw it on TV when it came out, it was an ordeal where it was like everyone at school was like, oh, fuck, it comes on tonight. And I think it was in 2 parts. Part 1 was one night and part 2 was another night. And I just remember it was required viewing. You watched it when it was on, no TiVo, nothing. It was like commercials and all that shit. And then the next day you go to school and you're like, oh man, that was fucking awesome. And so I have a bit of nostalgia for that, even though I know it's dated. And aside from Tim Curry, I think the movie is probably doesn't have the best acting in it. I just remember what's the kid's name that played Bill in the movie?
I don't know. I haven't seen it in a long
time. He's an actor that was in like a movie called Ladybugs where he dressed as a girl and played soccer. And then he was in a show called Sequest, and then he killed himself. So I don't know. Sorry to bring it down. But anyway, there's a scene that I used to, even when I was a kid, I used to quote it because the acting was so bad. And it was that Bill going, you killed my brother George, you bastard. And I always thought that was a really great delivery. Rest in peace, Ladybug's kid. I don't remember what his name was.
One of my I remember watching I was watching Nightmare on Elm Street with my mum, who
Do
funnily
you like
enough, if
the
you know,
original?
original first movie.
Nice.
And
Yes.
I was watching it with, here's the thing, right? On the one hand, my mum brought me up on 80s movies,
Yeah.
right? But I was under the impression growing up that she had every 80s movie ever made on DVD.
Yeah.
Come to find, I get about, 5 years older. I'm like, oh shit, there's a bunch of these that we don't own. What the fuck's up with that? Come to find, she'd never seen any of the Nightmare on Elm Street movies.
No way.
She was from the fucking 80s, and she'd never seen the Rambo movies, and I had. So I was like, that's it. Fucking marathon. We sat there and we
Both of
watched.
those are like,
Yeah.
it's almost like it was like, was your mom like locked in a basement for many years?
Well, here's the thing. She knew movies like, Weird Science, The Breakfast Club, Ghostbusters.
Sure, yeah.
I think she knew the big ones that were kind of more coming of age.
Wait,
movies than
your
like
mom is my
horror
age,
movies.
right?
Yeah, same. Well, actually, she's 2 years older.
It could be that she wasn't able to watch R-rated movies, because it sounds like all the ones you're rattling off are not R-rated movies. Maybe it was that sort of thing.
Could be. It's also like we've never really.
Or over there, it's not R.
Been,
what is it over there? 17 plus or something?
Well, we've got in Britain, we've got U, which is universal. Anyone can watch it. It's mostly kids movies. PG, some kids movies, some adult comedies, maybe. Like,
sometimes they say shit in those movies.
You get the occasional crap, maybe.
Oh.
But then you get to 12, which is like mild sex references. Then you get 15, which is like, swearing is allowed, but full frontal nudity is not. And then you've got 18 plus, or sorry, 18, which is fuck it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because when you're 18 over here, you can drink, so you're considered a full-blown adult.
Yeah, I'm guessing that would be the equivalent of R. But yeah, that is really weird that your mom hadn't seen at least one Nightmare on Elm Street movie, because that's
I think she'd seen Friday the 13th. To be fair, we weren't really a horror family growing up. It's only recently, in recent years, where I've just kind of branched out and just heard a bunch of really cool things about 80s horror movies, like The Thing and other things like that.
I mean, honestly, I'm not a very big horror fan when it comes to modern movies, but horror movies from the 80s and maybe the first half of the 90s, totally into those.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely watched a lot of 80s comedy and action movies though growing up. Like 10-year-old me was watching Point Break, man. Fucking
fuck it. Yeah, it's one of my favorites. Yeah. So that's you watched Nightmare on Elm Street with your mom.
Oh yeah, where I was going with that is that there's a line in that movie where like the mom is so deadpan, where she just goes, "He's dead, honey. He's dead because mommy killed him." Yes. And it's like, it just fucking cracked us both up. And it was just like...
that actress is fucking great. That's that's the next thing with my daughter, that because we're gonna, I knew that she really wanted to watch it, so we're getting that out of the way. And I'm like, when we're done with this, can we watch the Nightmare on Elm Street movies? And I'm like, well, because at first I was like, oh man, because like sometimes there's some boobs in them and there's some suggestive themes and some language. But I was like, by the time I was 11, I had already seen all of the Nightmare on Elm Street movies that had been made up to that point. And so I'm like, all right, we're good. We're gonna jump into Nightmare on Elm Street next.
It's one of those weird things, isn't it? Like, where I've thought to myself, like, if I have a kid one day, am I gonna draw the line at the same place? Say, my line was drawn, or would I go a bit more lenient, or would I be a little bit straight? I think I would just. I mean, I haven't stabbed anyone as far as I know. So, they kind of fucked me up that bad.
I can't. Yeah, I think it's part of it is because she's a girl and I didn't grow up being a girl. So I also don't know how this kind of stuff seems to a young girl. But my wife helps out with that. So,
and as a father, you're naturally protective of your daughter.
Yeah.
It's a good way to be.
That is for damn sure.
Big scary dad energy. That's the way.
Yeah. Some movies though, you're right. Like the movies that I was brought up on and loved, and a lot of times got to see in the theater. I watch them now and I'm like, these are brutal. Some of these are brutal fucking movies for, like maybe the special effects aren't that good. And maybe the blood itself is not as grotesque as a lot of other movies, but just the theme overall of the things happening in a lot of these movies. I'm just like, there's a lot of like violence and almost like unapologetic violence, especially when you're talking about, being a big fan of like Schwarzenegger and Stallone and all of those things where, I mean, literally, like one of the most memorable scenes from a Rambo movie is he just walks into a room and he shoots his machine gun everywhere. And I'm like, I was like, is a scene that would even get passed in a movie these days? Because it's, it's like, it's crazy. It's like, anyway, but we totally went off topic, but let's wrap it up.
There are like moments of, kind of, not to, actually do it, but I have thought to myself, I bet in that moment when Sylvester Stallone got to fire an entire M60 magazine into that office, like nobody's in it, nobody's getting shot. It's just a get the just get the fucking stress out. It's like my favorite bit is, mission accomplished.
That is, man, I want more movies like that. Like that's why like I really love like John Wick and stuff like that, is because like just give me a movie where it's a dude being a badass and he doesn't talk a lot. Like that is more of those kind of movies. I mean, and I think that they're happening. I think that because of the success of John Wick, I think we're going to see a lot of movies where it's like one lone man, everyone's scared shitless of him because he killed a guy with a pencil one time.
I love that. I love that opening line. One man, everyone's scared shitless of him.
It's like that.
This summer, one man.
There's this great movie from the 80s, and you may have seen it. It's called Crazy People with Dudley Moore, and it's a movie where he has a breakdown and he gets sent to like a mental hospital, but he's a guy that works for an ad agency, and he somehow gets all these mental patients to help him start working on ads for stuff. And one of them is like a tagline for a horror movie. And the tagline is, "This movie won't just scare you, it will fuck you up for life." And of course, like in the movie, the movie has lines around the block, like ready for this movie. And there's so many great scenes where it's like you see the difference in these ads. It's like the ad that you have says, "Come to the Bahamas." Ours says, "Come in the Bahamas." It's a really funny movie.
Yeah. That sounds it, man. I need to check that out.
I don't know if it was 80s or early 90s, but I just remember it being a movie that I saw that I just thought was fucking hilarious. And it's in parts of it still Crazy People.
Yeah. I'll have to look at that.
That was our movie tangent, folks.
Yes.
I'm gonna
chunky tangent.
What do you have left to talk about? How many things you have left on your list?
I've got two more kind of zones.
Okay, well let's do your first zone, and then we're gonna get to my last one.
Cool. I'm gonna go for the 2000s British school disco experience.
Whoa. Okay, like everything you just said went right over my head. 2000s school disco experience.
Yeah.
Okay.
If you happen to be listening to this, and you grew up in the mid to late 90s onward, and you were a kid between those years, if ever there was like a school disco, school dance, I suppose it would be called in the US, there were these songs that are just inseparable from that setup. And there's just some like Barbie Girl, Cha Cha Slide, Cotton Eye Joe, that one that goes Saturday night, Don't, pretty baby. Like there's so
I mean,
many.
I'm sure I've heard all these, but
Yeah, they're just like the poppy, dancey songs from like the mid to late 90s that just turned up out of nowhere and never went away. Because the thing is, it's like that's still during an era where the songs were innocent enough that you could play it to a room of 8-year-olds and it wouldn't be kind of fucked up. There's a lot of like pop music coming out now where like every other word is just blanked on the radio edit because it's like, oh, but I just remember there's so many times like I remember growing up, I must have had about like 6 school discos a year, and I just remember these things popping off, all of us, every now and again, whoa, guess what? He's got a full fat Pepsi. Whoa, he's go fucking crazy. But yeah.
So like these are there's a nostalgia to this because it's like school dances is like a big deal, when you're young, if you go to them, which I only went to like a couple school dances when I was young.
Yeah. And it wasn't really a slow dance kind of situation. It was just, hey, let's rent out the local village hall and have a DJ come in and play a bunch of mid to late 90s dance tunes and, watch these kids just eat a bunch of sugar and fucking skid across the dance floor like race cars. But I just
see that's funny because like you're mentioning that and I'm starting to think like, well, when I went to school dances, that was in junior high or middle school over here, which is 11, 12, 13 years old. And the music that was being played was all that new jack swing R&B. So it's it's like I totally get that.
I mean, like the middle and high school ones, that's a different setup altogether because you're teenagers now, and I mean, for want of a better word, it's a little bit of a when you're that age, you start, hey, me and Cindy are gonna sneak out the back, and like,
I mean, there was no Cindy. There was no Cindy for me. I was holding up the wall. I think I danced a few times. The biggest memory I have from a school dance was in the 8th grade. So this was in 91. And we convinced the DJ to play Enter Sandman because he wouldn't play. He had no metal to play, but it turns out that he had that song. And so like somewhere later in the dance, he put on Enter Sandman, entire floor cleared except for like 10 of us. And we all just stood in a circle and headbanged in the middle of the floor. And like, that's
awesome.
So we were happy that the dude at least played that, but the rest of it was just like us standing around looking at people. And if I, at that point in 8th grade, like I knew that I was into girls, but there were not really very many girls at my school where I was like, oh, I wish I could get with her. It was mostly like, oh, you're really lame. So I went to the dance and I was just like, I don't want to dance with anybody. What am I, an idiot?
Yeah, for me, it's like I had a few, that scene with Dustin at the end of like season 2 of Stranger Things, where he's like kind of by himself. And it's like this really sad moment, and not to sound, self-pitying for a minute, but there were a few times like that. The school disco is not all fun and games. Sometimes you get your heart broken.
That's true.
It's all right to admit that to a podcast. But I just remember those songs are so ingrained into that core memory for me that the moment I hear Cotton Eye Joe, I'm like,
are you talking about that Rednecks version where it's like almost like a dance?
Cotton Eye Joe, I've been married a long.
Yeah.
Where did you come from? Where did you go? Like I just cannot separate my, memory to going up to the snack, bar and saying, hey, I've got 25p. How many rainbow straws can I get for that? Sweet. Thank you. I'm going to be so fucked up tonight.
Mine would have been like, how many atomic fireballs can I get for that much? I used to love those things. I haven't had an atomic fireball in fucking 20 years probably. or
Yeah,
more.
dude. Yeah, we used to have these like so sorry, I got one more.
No, yeah, okay.
I was gonna say, like, there was a youth club I used to go to that had a similar setup, but it had like pool tables and shit. And I
Hmm.
just remember I've never had them since, and I've been looking and looking and looking for them. And they were these like little foam snails that you could get, and inside their shell was this like, Haribo kind of jelly inside, and they were ace, man. I just remember
Nice.
like that is a taste I have not tasted since I was 10, and I want it back. And I'm going on a hunt.
Everybody out there, if you know what he's talking about, comment or something and just let him know.
Yeah.
Send him a link where you can get them.
It's likely a British exclusive, but who knows?
Yeah. So my final artist that I would like to talk about is like the ultimate of a thing that I'm into that people would be surprised by. So much so that like before we started this episode, my wife's like, "What's the topic today?" I'm like, "Oh, we're doing the C&R Sidebar, and it's about artists we love that people think is out of character." And she's like, "Oh, you're talking about this artist." She like literally knew what I was talking about, and I'm like, "Yep." And it brings us back to around the time that you were born. In fact, your mom may have been boning your dad while this artist was playing. I don't know, but I unironically love this group.
I fucking knew it was going to be Spice Girls.
The Spice
I knew
Girls.
it. Yeah.
I can't even. It's literally no joke. I mean, I literally have their first album on vinyl. I'd have the second one on vinyl, but like it's a little bit expensive. Plus, I think that one's it's having its 25th anniversary, so I'm like, oh, maybe they'll put out like a deluxe version because we're reaching the 25th anniversary of Spice World, the movie, which is also one of my favorite movies. I realize it's dumb. It's good dumb. But the Spice Girls, for some reason, I don't know what happened, because it wasn't the song that everybody else got into. That song "Wannabe" is like one of my least favorite Spice Girls songs, because I was like, oh, it's kind of annoying and whatever. But then several months later, they released the single for "Say You'll Be There," and that was my fucking jam. Still is. Amazing pop song to me. And so for some reason, I just remember like I got really into that, and I was like, oh, I like this song. And then I heard more of their stuff, and I'm like, there's a lot of really good songs here. And then that movie came out, and I remember like I didn't see it in the theater, because I think over here that movie like came out and it was a flop and it went away in a week. Like there was no, nobody saw it. But then it came out on VHS, and I bought a VHS version of it and watched the fuck out of it. And all of a sudden, like, and this is still late 90s. I'm all of a sudden I'm just like, I'm a legit fan of the Spice Girls. And it's never gone away. Like it's the same way I talk about all this other music, that one of their songs comes on, I'm just like, I can't explain it, but it's definitely not anything I've ever been ashamed of. It's just a thing where I'm just like, I sometimes don't understand why other people don't love them the way I do. It's like, and while we're on the subject, in case anyone is curious, in case there are others of you out there that are like me, Sporty is the best Spice Girl. Not because I think sports is cool, because if you know anything about me, fuck sports, I don't care. But
I don't play sports ball.
Nah, but Sporty fucking carries that fucking group. She's the best. That's Mel C. No, Mel B. No, Mel B is Scary Spice. Mel C is Sporty. She's the best singer in that group. In the movie, she's like the most entertaining member of the group. And she's just somebody that, like, everything I've heard that she's done, I'm all like, okay, they all have different levels of talent. Jerry Halliwell can barely sing. But she's famous. But I guess she had her tits out all the time, so I guess that helps. But Sporty is the one that I'm just like, man, she's like, I love her voice, and like that's my Spice Girl. It's Sporty, just in case anyone wanted to know.
Britain has a history of, great music. The Beatles, the Rolling Stones, the Spice Girls.
Yes. I'd put,
And
you know what? If somebody came to me and said, "Would you like to listen to Abbey Road or Spice World?" I'd be like, "Put fucking Spice World on right now. What the fuck? Quit fucking around." Because I want to hear "Spice Up Your Life" right now.
Oi,
Um,
don't mess me about, bruv. Want to listen to Spice Girls?
See, it's times like that that I wish that I had that accent because it sounds
Yeah.
more legit. Like I could get into a fight at a bar over it, and I'd feel
Yeah.
okay. And the most useless Spice Girl is Posh. I mean, what the fuck was she even there for? She's not in the group. She doesn't like do stuff with the group anymore. And I'm all like, I know, because you're totally unnecessary. Your character's the most boring, and
Hmm.
so whatever. But you know what? She's doing quite well. Married to one
She's
of the
still with
most,
David Beckham.
I believe she is married to one of the most famous footballers in the world.
Yeah.
So she's doing okay. She doesn't need my support. But yeah, Spice Girls is like it's just if you I almost feel like it should be if I became famous and like in the end I die and they do like a thing, let's talk about Steven's life. Yes, talk about Metallica and Nirvana, but Spice Girls has to be put in there somehow because it's like they're very important to me. And yeah, so that's because remember at the beginning I said, oh, my last one is actually spicy as well, and it it was legit
Nice.
spicy. Anyway,
I
so all
will
right,
say,
what do we got? Oh, go ahead.
while we're on the subject of one last like kind of British pop act I want to talk about before I go into my last thing,
Sure.
which is very American.
Okay.
So my the first album I ever knew, start to finish, because it was just so huge,
Mhm.
and it was in the car all the time, and everybody loved every song, is Life in Cartoon Motion by Mika. And
Oh,
in 2000
I
and
don't even know
like,
Mika.
dude, like I'm sure you must have at least heard what's it called? Um fucking was it I
Nope, I
can be
don't know that
brown, I
one.
can be blue. I'm blanking on it now.
Oh, now that you said
Grace
those
Kelly.
lyrics, now that you've
Yeah.
mentioned those lyrics, that's a song that my wife mentioned, and I did the same thing where I went, I don't think I've ever heard that. So she played it for me, and I go, oh, okay. I still don't know if I've ever really heard this song before, but
Wow.
I at least know what you're talking about.
Yeah, like oh, man, when I look through this track list, like this album came out in 2007,
Yeah.
and my school used to do this thing called Take the Stage, where basically um there were these like plinths people we would put in the middle, and like all the brave, confident kids, who wanted to get up and, either do a choreographed dance routine with all their friends, or get up and sing, or get up and play an instrument. It was a talent show.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay.
the amount of people that came up and either sang or danced one of many songs from this album.
Oh wow. Okay. So
Like,
regionally it was a huge thing because over here I don't it didn't make a big enough splash where I even remember it.
it was very big in the UK.
I
How
mean,
Grace
for over here,
Kelly's got,
the
yeah,
big UK things over here were Spice Girls, and I guess Robbie Williams made kind of a splash over here as well.
yeah, he's from Take That.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I just remember like this album. You look at the plays on this album, and it's like Grace Kelly has nearly 300 million.
Wow.
Relax, Take It Easy has 111 million. Big Girl, You Are Beautiful is I see.
That's
I love
another
that
one that
song.
my wife mentioned. That's an artist that like people know. I'm for some reason I was just I it totally missed me. So that's interesting.
It's a really fun, enjoyable, happy listen,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
a lot of the guilty pleasures, I guess you would say, are rooted in like childhood nostalgia
Yeah.
in a lot of this. But like, I mean, I suppose some of it came along later, but that was a result of Grand Theft Auto games, if anything.
Hmm.
But going off of that, and I'm going to mention this now because that's a perfect way to segue.
Cool.
I, like you and I, if there is a differing opinion we have on anything,
Oh shit. Okay.
that is the genre of country music.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Because yeah. Now, like, I'm not into the whole, like, basically, Republican, candidate commercial kind of country where it's
Yeah.
like it's just got a boom bang ding 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 like sort of thing where it's like I and it's always about I got my pickup truck and like
It's always like a story of like back in my town we drove pickups and we drank beers and the
yeah.
girl that I loved, and it's all like there was recently, I was with my my wife's family and everything at a restaurant, and they had country music on, playing modern country music, and I'm like, every fucking song is exactly the same, and the singers all sound exactly the same, and I'm like, oh, that's what everybody wants now, is just this pablum like over and over again. It's like, whatever, but I'm sure that's not what you're into though.
No, it's not. And I'm much more into the country music, I was kind of raised on because my grandparents big fans of country.
Yeah.
And I suppose as well, I'm a Brit, so I'm, removed from, I mean, you're in Texas, so,
Yeah.
therefore you probably feel the same way about country music that I do about kind of UK hip hop. And it's not so much that, I don't respect them. I think they're very talented. It just doesn't appeal to my ears because I have this memory of just hearing grime blasting out of shitty phone speakers at the back of the bus being
Yeah.
played by these shithead chav kids that just ruined anything. Like, I had a semi interest in sport in primary school.
Mhm.
All the chavs fucking killed football for me because I was like, well, if these are the type of assholes that this attracts, I didn't want to be around it.
Yeah.
Nowadays, if you like football, cool, it does not make me less of a man that I do not kick a ball in a field,
Yep.
I bet you
And I mean,
couldn't play
and
double kick. Yeah.
we've all moved past gender stereotypes. Well, those of
Yeah.
us who are don't have our heads up our asses, we've moved
Yeah.
past gender stereotypes.
Yeah.
Because I've lived
like,
I've lived my whole life going against the grain with things and so I totally get that.
I myself have done that, and I'm gonna tell you, like, real quick. When I was a kid, I was always had to be different, not in an asshole way, just like, no, I prefer this, And my
Yeah.
mum said, "Do you want this Spider-Man cake for your birthday?" And I was like, "No, I want this one." And it was like a full-blown, like, old-timey wedding anniversary cake sort of thing. Main
Nice.
reason I wanted it is because the fucking the icing looked tastier. I
Yeah.
was like, sure, like Spider-Man looks cool, but this royal icing on this cake is probably going to taste real good. So that was my thought process for
And it
that.
was probably like a $10 difference too. You probably picked the more expensive cake out of the two, or
Yeah.
or in your case that would be 8 pounds, about 8 pounds more. I don't know,
Yeah.
or
You're
quid,
probably bang on.
eight
Yeah.
quid.
8 quid, 8 quid, 10 quid, 20 quid. You're pushing it, mate. Yeah. Oh, what is it? But yeah, like I say, the country thing.
Yeah.
I grew up.
So let me guess. You're probably a fan of, just like the genres of metal and everything else, the late 80s, early 90s, like Garth Brooks and all that kind of stuff. Like, is that kind of where you like your shit?
Earlier too. Like, anything from pretty much the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s,
Mhm.
I enjoy. I tend to like, there is a cutoff point during kind of the 90s era where I'm starting to hear this is kind of where it starts to end because it begins to become sonically very similar. And I know that there's country artists today doing authentic stuff with like full bands behind them.
Yeah.
I'm not, but it's the stuff you hear on the radio now where it is pop with a southern accent. But I
Yeah.
tell you one band in particular Like my two favorite like old school country artists are Willie Nelson and Johnny Cash.
Okay.
But there's uh there's a band that just clicked for me because they're almost like what an 80s rock band would be if they were a country band.
Oh, can I guess? Can
And
I guess who this is?
uh you can try. They're kind of lost to time a little bit.
Is it Alabama?
No, no, it's not Alabama.
Okay.
It's the Desert Rose Band.
Okay. All
And
right. Not as big as Alabama, but yes, yes, that's a group from that. That was 70s, right? Did they put stuff out in the 70s?
no, they were late 80s, early 90s.
Okay. All right.
And they had a song on um, the country station on GTA San Andreas called K Rose. That was the first station I actively chose to listen to because at the time I'd been brought up on that music. So I was kind of like,
Yeah.
so if I steal this, 4x4 and drive off into the country, I'll be just like my mom or my granddad driving the truck, around. And I used to pretend to be, my parents sometimes, where I'd go out into the countryside and I'd just drive around listening to the country music on it. But the song One Step Forward is just such a great song.
Hmm.
And like there's a lot of stuff that they've done that you probably wouldn't be into, but
No,
they've got a lot of
probably not.
really well they've got a lot of really well written material. And
Yeah. I mean,
yeah,
there's definitely some well written country music because essentially some of it boils down to I'm a sucker. My appreciation of the pop sensibility doesn't stop at a genre. So I can hear a
yeah.
song and go, well, this song is really well written, has a catchy chorus, and the melody is enjoyable or whatever. My problem is just the all the aspects of it that make it country, the twanginess of it. It's
Hmm.
like what kills me with a lot of that music, because there's artists now, modern artists, that people are like, oh, you should listen to them, they're alt country. And I'm like, well, yeah, I'm all behind the alt part of it. Can they get rid of the country part and just start writing good music? So but for you, I think it's the same thing, where I associate country music with some of
Hmm.
the worst people in America. And so I just want to be as far away from a lot of it as possible. That being said, there's a couple Garth Brooks songs that I enjoy. From when I was a kid, the big artist for me was Kenny Rogers. Loved Kenny Rogers. I have
Hmm.
all of The Gambler memorized. I could just sing it for you right now.
Yeah.
So,
Every gambler knows.
yeah,
Yeah.
on a warm summer's evening. So I mean,
David.
so there are parts here and there, but because of just the repetitiveness of a lot of it and my association with a lot of it over the years, I've pushed it further and further away, where I'm just like, I don't even want to listen to this. The only time I'll listen to country music is if my wife ever does, because she likes a little bit of it. A lot
Hmm.
of it's older stuff. She's not into newer stuff either. But that's kind of as far as it goes. But the thing that I was going to say, though, is that I kind of wish that I could hear it through your brain, because I might appreciate it a lot more. But it's never going to
Yeah.
happen. So I get coming from your angle. It's sounding and painting a different picture for you than it does for me.
Yeah. One thing I would like to kind of do as kind of an experiment is because the first album, what's the first album? Their first album, the Desert Rose Band,
Yeah.
31 minutes and 29 seconds long.
Okay.
Not a long album by any stretch. I am kind of intrigued for you to hear like maybe at least like the first half of that album because it is kind of like I would say it's as pop rock as it is country,
Okay.
and it has enough of the 80s production on it for it to both, speak to me in that way, but it
Yeah.
also has like that, warm childhood fuzzy feeling. But I will say in terms of, sound wise, the vocals are actually, they have a slight drawl to them, but it's Chris Hillman from the Birds who fronts it. But
Oh, okay. So
Yeah,
he's been that's a guy that's been around in the game for a while. Not the country music game necessarily, but music.
yeah. But like the album is like there's so many good ones, man. If there's a way for you to hear kind of country music through my ears, that's probably the way to do it.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'll check
we
it
could
out for sure.
reconvene.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I'll at least listen to the first track if I can get through it, then I'll move forward. That is definitely like out of character, because not only you being a guy that's clearly very into rock and roll, but also you being British, like that's
yeah.
So it is,
And also
is
a
a,
hip hop head,
and yeah,
and they
is a
tend to not
is
like
American
crossover.
is American country music like popular over there? Like, do you hear it out and about ever?
It. I did more when I was a kid, to be fair.
Uh-huh.
But I think that's from my mum having it in the car all the time.
Yeah.
I don't think it's not nearly as big over here as it is in the US. I mean, obviously it's going to be big in its homeland.
Yeah.
But I have a friend who moved to Virginia. He married a girl, and he lives in the US now. He lives in Virginia, and he said the quantity of country music you hear on the radio compared to Britain is staggering.
Yeah.
And it's funny, we're two English speaking nations,
Yeah.
but it's culturally there's so much else there. It's strange. But that's like the cool dynamic about this show. It's like we come in it from two different angles.
Yeah. Are there any well-known British artists that do country type music? Because I know because you're talking about things that appear to be very American country music, but then hip hop, came from America, and I know there's a lot of British hip hop, but the country music side of things, I don't think I've ever heard of a British artist doing country music.
Let's have a look. British country singers. Okay. Apparently one of them is Robert Plant. So there,
because he's British and he has done country music, because he did, well, it was more like folk music, because he did stuff with Alison Krauss, I believe, which that would be more folky stuff, but I guess it's related. It's a distant cousin to country music, I guess. I don't know.
I suppose, like, I mean, you could argue country is like it's like just American folk in a way. Yeah. There's not an awful lot, barring the industry it became, separating it initially. It was just like when it started out, it was acoustic guitars, maybe a lap steel, dun, 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 dun,
yep,
and you have a song.
I know that's why, and that right there is why I don't like country music, because like that's all it takes. It's like there you go, there's a country song, boom. That's a good way to wrap it up, though, because wrapping it up with not only something that would be considered out of character, but is polarizing between the two of us, where I'm just like, nah, I want nothing to fucking do with that music. But but it's interesting. So then, and that I feel like this has been a very big, like, getting to know, old head and young Ed on this show. Like, it may put some things into perspective when we are ranking music, and I feel like for the most part we're very good at like interjecting our personal opinions and why they're shaped that way. But I feel like this was gave everybody a nice little peek into who we really are, when we're not rocking with Dawkins.
Rocking with Dawkins. Love it. Breaking the chains.
I think that's a band that I think people have requested us do Cranked and Ranked on like several times. I'm like, okay, yeah, Dawkins, I get it. Eventually we'll get to Dawkins. Which brings us right back around. Nightmare on Elm Street Part 3, Dream Warriors.
Dream Warriors.
Yeah.
Don't want to dream no more.
Before we're led into another tangent. Were you about to say something and I just stomped all over it?
Now, I was just gonna say, did you know that, like, in that scene in the music video where George Lynch crashes through the wall?
Yeah.
Apparently, he didn't feel a fucking thing. He was that high. They just threw him through the wall.
Oh, yeah. That's a great video,
Yeah.
great movie. Yeah.
Great
So
code.
yeah, that might be a good C&R sidebar one day where because we talk about movies so much, we should split it up and do like talk about different genres of movies or things that we love. Like I said before, if you're still here, Peanut Butter Platypus, that is you.
Oh yeah.
But like I said earlier, if you have any suggestions, now that you've seen how this plays out, any suggestions of what you think would be a good topic for a future C&R sidebar, put it in the comments on YouTube or email me at oldheadpodcast@gmail.com. Because it's, like I said, this has been a good little palate cleanser, and then we can jump back into ranking and other things like that. So as usual, just put your thoughts in the comments and let us know how you feel about this kind of thing. Because if you are one of those people that's like, just rank the albums and quit talking about yourselves, then you probably aren't even listening anymore. So, but this has been fun, and we got like an hour and a half plus of content out of just an idea. So
we're gonna get some asshole that's gonna have already commented this. How could Eddie talk about the British British primary school disco experience and not mention the Macarena? Because that's a prime example. But yeah,
that was very big over here as well.
Yeah.
I never understood it. It was, so you bring up the Macarena, and for some reason my brain immediately goes to Who Let the Dogs Out. Like that was it's like around that same time, like those were the songs that are like really big. It's funny. I was in the I'm a patron of Howard H. Smith from Acid Rain. He has a Patreon account, and he does these Zoom meetings with all of his subscribers that want to come, and he brings up Rammstein because he's a big Rammstein fan and I'm not. And I was trying to explain how for many, many years, because of the time period that it came out, and I wasn't interested in the music at all. So when Du Hast came out, I was like, oh, I'm not really into this. But another song that came out at that same time that was also kind of big was Tub Thumping by Chumbawamba. And so for many years, people would say Rammstein, and I'd have to stop for a second and go, is that I Get Knocked Down, or is that Du Hast? Because I would get Chumbawamba and Rammstein mixed up, because it was like they were both songs that came out, and I'm like, I'm not interested in hearing any more of either one of these artists. Thank you.
I'm going to step in and say Du Hast is probably the reason I became a metalhead, though.
Therefore, I like it. I like the song for that reason. Because it was the catalyst that eventually would lead us together. So on that note, that's a good way to end. Thank you all for listening and or watching this episode, the C&R Sidebar. We'll be back again soon, probably next week with another album ranking. Thanks for the support. Thanks for watching. And as usual, I will throw it over to my friend, Mr. Eddie Sparxx, to take us out.
Later, dude. Do you want some backy? Do you want a ciggy, mate? Do you want a ciggy? That's my British bloke in an alleyway.
Honestly,
you want a ciggy, mate?
I could, if you had just kept doing that, I wasn't going to stop you. It could have been like a 10-minute outro, because I'm like, the accent just, because I am a true American. Where that accent comes on, I'm just like, oh man, it's just so nice to listen to.
Yeah.
All right. Bye, everyone.
Later.